Okay, say it again. You still on mute.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kenny Bailey, the Life Doctor.
I'm Terrence Johnson, the Life Excavator.
And I'm Jeffrey Hart, the life champion.
And today we have another great topic. Today, our topic is life's classroom trust issues. And so today we're going to have a good dialogue about trust issues in general. And we're going to hit it from all different perspectives, all different dynamics. We'll talk about trust issues in regards to relationships, whether it's spiritual, whether it's in a romantic relationship, whether it's in friendships, or whether it's with family. Trust issues. So if you're just now joining us, please connect with us, send or share this message with two or three people, and join us for another great topic.
All right.
Feel like
So,
we love.
huh?
Feel like we love today.
Yeah, you announcing the word. So one thing while you're going through the list of different areas of trust issues, one that I think it'll be good to start with, that's maybe not the typical one, is from a spiritual standpoint. Because I
Mm.
think a lot of people, that's one of their main trust issues, is from a spiritual standpoint about how either how they can trust God or how do they return to trusting God after something happened.
No, I think that's a great, way to start this discussion off. So trust issues. So trust issues has a lot to do with your relationship. And so in the past, we talked about rituals versus relationship. Well, if you have a ritualistic, relationship with your spirituality, it makes sense, not to understand what trust means and how to, give trust and how to obtain it. And I think a lot of it is about in your practices. So having a healthy relationship with your spirituality and knowing, the intent to why you do things and who you surround yourself with helps you understand when you need to trust your intuition to do things, but also trust your intuition when you need to abstain from things. And I think with your spiritual relationship, trust um, is important, but it's also built when sometimes you abstain away from things, but when you fast, because you get a deeper understanding of, your relationship with God.
All right. So one thing you said I think was a good point, and I wanted you to kind of go farther into it. So you said it's good to have a healthy relationship with spirituality. So how can people have an unhealthy relationship with spirituality?
Well,
Well,
if they're going,
Oh,
Jeff.
definitely.
before you go there, I think it'll be good to define what trust actually is.
Okay.
All right.
Um,
So you got it, or you want me to get it? 'Cause I'm pulling it up now.
I was gonna just get y'all opinion on it.
Okay.
Oh,
Or,
oh, we're talking about our own definition of trust.
yeah,
Uh, I think I think trust to really trust somebody, you have to accept that they're human. I think a lot of times with trust, we want people to do things that we're not willing to do ourselves. So we got a unrealistic viewpoint of trust because if you think that the people that you trust won't do something that will hurt you, then you got it confused because we all human. We're gonna mess up. We're gonna make mistakes.
Mhm.
So trust is not necessarily saying that I trust that you won't hurt me. It's more of you won't hurt me intentionally. Because some
Mhm.
people hurt you intentionally and they know exactly what they're doing. But as we grow and become better, certain things that we used to do that we don't do now because we learn better. And so I think it's almost to really trust somebody, you have to have grace built into it too.
Mhm. No, I like that answer. Trust isn't all or none. So trust isn't black and white. So
Mhm.
one of the best examples I can give people based off of trust is: would you trust a doctor to build you a house? Your answer is probably no. because they're not equipped with the tools, knowledge, or skills to do so. And so trust is based on experience. Trust is a firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something. It's an arrangement whereby a person holds property as a nominal owner for the good of one or more beneficiaries. And like I said, is believe in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of. So we, in order to trust, that means we believe people would carry out or do what they say they would do. And so when we bring it back to our faith or spirituality, sometimes trust is all about a lot of what you don't see, and believing things will still turn out the way that you pray and hope for.
So based on what you just said, that trust is also, you can kind of intertwine trust and faith.
They're definitely connected.
Right. Because I think trust is basically an expectation that you hold for someone else or something. And like I said, we're talking about trust issues. You start having that when your particular expectations for that person or that thing isn't met, and so now you kind of wavering. You don't have that belief and that faith in that person. So and kind of going spirituality, I think that's what a lot of people have trust issues with their spiritual life or God or whatever, is because they had these expectations that they feel weren't met. And so now, they didn't lost the faith and lost the belief in the spiritual life in God. So yeah, that's how that.
So let me ask y'all this question. Let me put my computer down, because we do this all the time. And we often ask people to do things that we're not willing to do or ready to do.
Right.
So for example, we often ask people to trust us when we're not willing to trust them. We often ask people to trust us when we're not willing to trust them. And so if you go back to the spiritual relationship, we often, ask God to trust us, or we want God to trust us, but we're not living a trustworthy life. So, what we're asking is really more than what we're ready to give. And is that a fair assessment of relationships, or of your spiritual relationship? Are you asking for more than what you're really able to give up?
Now, I think it's a good question because it goes into your investment. So, most of us, we think of God as an ATM. So when we ready to make a withdrawal, like, Lord, okay, I got this bill coming up. I want this job. Right? Okay, let me just give me the code, and then let me go and get that, and then I appreciate you, Lord. But it's more of a day-to-day investment with Him, and in a more intimate relationship, and that's how then it's almost kind of like how like you have people that you close to, but then you have people that know of you and that you might bump into them, like, oh man, good to see you, whatever. But you like, man, I don't even know you like that. and that's how God do with us. It's like, hey guys, what's going on? God, like, I don't even know you like that. Like, you don't spend time with me like that. I don't know you like that. And that's how we do. That's how we do with God. We want God to always recognize us, but we don't recognize Him. We don't really acknowledge Him the way that He deserves. And so I think that's what they got to realize when they think, oh, God just taking me through, or how you have people, oh, I'm going through. I'm going through. You could be going through because you're not talking to God. You just going through because you like to be going through. That's your story. That could be your thing. So you like to be going through, just so somebody can say, oh, I'm gonna pray for you, I'm gonna whatever like that. So you gotta change the narrative about who God is in your life and why you need Him in your life, and not just for the things you can get from Him, but because of who He is.
And so I guess that brings up the next piece to trust issues. Let's look at trust issues in regards to our romantic relationships.
Mhm.
Trust issues in regards to your romantic relationships. So a lot of people, ask me questions in regards to therapy about how do you strengthen a relationship. And I always tell them in relationships, you got to remove the selfish parts of yourself and be willing to compromise. So today, if you just joined us, our discussion is about trust issues. And we talked earlier about spirituality and trust. And now we're jumping to trust as it relates to romantic relationships. And people often, want to join workshops or they want to come to, couples therapy or in regards to their relationship because they don't trust one another, like they used to. And so when you lose trust in someone, that means you've gone against or you offended one of their values or their beliefs. And tell you what I mean by that. In order for me to lose trust in you, you must have done something that goes against my values. So if I value family, if I value my faith, if I value friends, or if I value, monogamy, if I value honesty, if offended one of those values, then I'm wounded, and so therefore I don't trust you to do certain things or to have my well-being at your best interest anymore. And so, how do you repair trust when it's been wounded in the relationship? How do you repair trust once it's wounded in the relationship?
I think one of the ways is you have to know the source. So in order to repair something, you have to know exactly what's the issue or concern, then go in and repair. Most oftentimes when you go into relationships, you got faulty patterns of relationships that you've seen from growing up. So whatever your mother and father went through, that's what you saw. So that was your first idea of what a relationship was. So for those of us that may not have had chances to unpack that, we bring that into our romantic relationships. So then if it's an issue with our mother and father, those specific things, when it's triggered in our relationships, then it can blow up. And it might not be the person we with, is what we saw. And then that became an expectation of, okay, when I get in a relationship, I'm not gonna allow that to happen. Or this seems a lot like what I remember with my parents going through, even though we don't say it that way, but on a certain level, that's why our reaction can be so strong to some stuff that's like, that's a big issue for you. It may not be the person, they just triggering something that is based off of a pattern that you had over time.
Okay. And so when Terrence was talking about unpacking things, I always tell people it's important to know family dynamics when you get into relationships. It's important to unpack that because how my family deals with relationships may be totally different
Mhm.
than the way my spouse family may have dealt with relationships. And so, and my spouse family may have always, focused on open communication and having honest dialogue. In my family, maybe, we sweep things under the rug and we don't talk about them.
Mhm.
And so by keeping things away from somebody, then that allows you to distrust them because omitting the truth is the same as lying
Mhm.
because you're not being forthcoming with information. And then if my way of doing things is always bringing it out in the open, and your way of doing it is always pushing it back, then we got conflicting styles on how to address issues. And over time, we start to believe that there's something, inherently wrong when it's really you got two different ways of handling things. And so my mind starts to wonder, and I may, come up with far-fetched ideas. Well, if they not talking to me, then they talking to somebody else.
Mhm.
So then infidelity pops in my head. Now, doesn't mean that any type of infidelity is going on, but because we don't communicate and because we don't come together to hash out things, you know, the person that always brings stuff to the table says, well, if you're not talking to me, you're talking to somebody else. The person that never brings anything to the table is, they're too controlling because they always want to work things out. And sometimes you have to establish the own rules in your relationship because remember, trust is based on experience. Experience tells you what you can trust about situations of people. If 9 times out of 10 this happens, then it's more likely that that's gonna happen than it's not gonna happen. And so we don't trust our experiences. Sometimes we trust what we want to happen and not what's been happening. And then we wait to the end after these things have happened for so long, and we wonder how did we miss all the signs and cues when where did the trust go wrong in our relationship?
No, you made a couple different points. One of them was, I wrote down jumping to conclusions, and that's what a lot of us do. We jump to conclusions and we formulate in our head how a whole scenario of how stuff went. And so, man, it's a quote or it was something I had read. Basically, it's like if a person didn't tell you that outright, then you can't don't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
So if it didn't come directly from them, then you can't make assumptions that it happened a certain way. And a lot of things that's in our head are never verified by the people that we are then holding to such high expectations, because 9 times out of 10 they're not doing what we envision they're doing. It's just we jump to conclusions because we haven't communicated or asked a question. And sometimes asking a question can give you what you need, but you don't want to ask the question because you're afraid of what you're gonna get back. And sometimes it all just boils down to, if you have something that's on you, ask the question. Once the question is asked, then you got the information you need to make a decision. And that could be what you want to hear, and it could be what you don't want to hear, but at least you know.
You're talking good now. So you're bringing up something that we talk about a lot. Patterns. A pattern that people have in relationships is jumping to conclusions, overgeneralizing, emotional reasoning. Because I feel this way, then this must be happening. Overgeneralizing is you're always doing this, or you never do this. And jumping to conclusions is when you don't have evidence about something, you automatically come up with an answer. And so in relationships, we experience these issues, and it's because we don't trust our own experiences and we don't communicate to get the answer. We draw on our own information to draw conclusions. And so that's a lot of the reason that we have trust issues, because we really don't be talking about anything in our relationships, and they're built on faulty foundations.
Yeah, just kind of going back to, you say you formulate these stories or whatever in your head. I was sitting there thinking like, yeah, you write a script to this whole movie in your head, and you got to realize movies aren't real. So whatever you got playing in your mind over and over again, kind of like what Terrence said, if you don't ask the question to get the reality, of what's going on, you're gonna constantly play this movie in your head over and over again, and you're gonna live in this fantasy land of of what you perceive or what you think is actually going on. And so, like I said, until you get the real script, basically, of what's going on, then you're just gonna be stuck in this cycle, and like I said, dealing with a whole lot of trust issues.
Yeah. And fantasy world is where they want to stay. So some people don't want to come back to reality. They
Mm.
would rather stay in that world that they formulate. And that's like what Kendra was saying earlier. That's how you can miss the red flag or the signals that something wasn't right because you created a whole fantasy around a relationship to where you just want the fantasy to continue and you not looking at what's really right in front of you, like the reality. And so that's why it's hard, you know, with some people with relationships, it can be, it can be almost like you drunk. It can be intoxicating at times. And people on the outside, even if they see it, you won't believe it until you come out of the fantasy of it and see it for what it really is. But as long as you in the fantasy world, you just caught up in it. Nobody can tell you anything different. And that's how people get in that pattern of being in those relationships or being in toxic relationships because it's the fantasy of what they wanted.
Mm.
And as long as they can buy into the fantasy, whatever happened in reality, they can justify it. They're like, oh yeah, but that's just how we do, and they kind of explain it away and not see it for what it really is. But okay, so since Renee said something else, I want to go back to the one she said before about making my own model home. So TD Jakes has a series. Him and his wife did the first one about model homes, and they talked about their relationship. And it's real, real good. And it's a series of 3 of them. I think the first one was him and his wife. The second one was him and his kids.
I think his son came in there. I think I watched them.
Yeah, the second one was the son. I think the third one maybe like his daughters or whatever. But they really went into how their personalities shaped their relationship. So he said he's an extrovert, his wife is an introvert, and he had to learn how to communicate with her and vice versa. But also the environments they needed. Because she's an introvert, she don't like a whole lot of noise. He like a lot of noise and like a lot of different things going on that feed his personality. And so even with that dynamic, if you don't know the person you with, their personality, you would then jump to a conclusion like, oh, they don't want to be around me. And if they introverted, they might just need time away. Not they don't want to be around you, they just need time to recharge. And for the extroverted, they may be up and going a lot more. And they're like, well, they always gone and they always talking to more folks, they info face and and all that kind of stuff. But that kind of feeds their personality. And so you have to know the dynamics of who you with and kind of what feeds them and then what areas that they need, that can be harmful to them too. Mm-hmm. Because you really care about the person you with, you in tune to the things that hurt them, but also the things that help them as well.
Yeah. But now you brought up another good point about introvert and extrovert, and we mentioned it before, but I don't think people really pay attention in the context of romantic relationships. With introvert and extrovert, a lot of times is where you draw your energy from. Mm-hmm. Sometimes if we draw energy from crowds, where a lot of extroverts do, being the life of the party, you can take that out of context, and it can be misleading. Mm-hmm. But that could be just where they get their energy from. And mm-hmm. when that person is always alone, where they're hiding, well, they're just where they recharge. Mm-hmm. And if we don't talk about those dynamics, on the front end in relationships, or we're not aware of that in relationships, we always misinterpret things. And one thing I tell people about the profession that we're in mental health, never interpret things, because just because you interpret it the way you interpret it don't mean it's accurate. I will say it again. Never interpret things, because the way you interpret it may not be accurate. Because I can't make an assumption on what I think somebody thinks and feels, because I don't have the ability to know what's going on in their head or their heart. And so we make those mistakes often in our relationships because we assume that we know what people are thinking and feeling when we don't have that power to possess it. And so by starting the conversation, we can address a lot of trust issues if we just communicate. because most trust issues is just a misinterpretation of how people go about handling their business.
Mm-hmm. But one thing I was thinking about when you were talking, you were saying how people misinterpret, and it's easy to misinterpret when your interpretation is based off your own experience, like you were saying before. So I'm always going to be biased in what I say because informed by what I've experienced. So if I have experienced what you experienced, then me talking about your experience it might not translate or resonate with you because I don't fully know what that feels like. And that's what we do. We'll tell people like, oh man, I know how you feel. Well, not exactly. No, you don't. if you have experienced that, you can say that, there might be a rough time for me. It might be difficult, but you can't really say you know how I feel unless you've experienced that. Now, if you've experienced that, the way you communicate to me will let me know that you understand my experience. And that's what, so is, I think most people, they feel that they must be able to relate to everybody's experience. And that's one of the things that can make the person feel either frustrated or not heard, because just saying a blanket, oh, I know how you feel, does not make me feel better. What will make me feel better is feeling that you, one, hear me, but then two, understand the ramifications of my current experience. And I will know that by how you talk about it, because then the certain wording that I use, you use it too. Not that you're trying to, like overly connect with me, but from a shared experience, it comes at a place that's very linear and parallel to my experience. And that's sometimes, and even from what being in the mental health field, that's what can turn a lot of people away from therapy if their therapist tries to over identify with what they're going through. Sometimes the people that come in, we might not have that experience, but we allow them to inform us about the experience so we can better understand. And sometimes that's the best thing to do. If you don't understand the experience, allow the person to inform you about what that feels like. Then you know how you can better be there for them. But if you just always saying like, "Oh, I know how you feel," no, you don't, and then it makes me not want to talk. so,
So if you're just joining in, again, the title of our discussion today is Trust Issues. So far, we've hit it on a spiritual aspect, and right now we're dissecting it from a romantic aspect about how people, experience trust issues, but why they experience trust issues. We talk about misinterpreting information, but we also talk about trying to compensate and think that we know all and have been in every situation. And so we assume that we know how people feel or how they think when we don't. And so, definitely ways to address it. I'm gonna give Jeffrey an opportunity now to speak on trust issues and relationships and see what layer he wants to add.
Well, now, as Steve was talking, I kind of had a question. You're talking about,
Questions, Steve.
I know you. I knew you're gonna be coming with them.
You were talking about, how people say, when somebody's going through something, oh, I know how you feel, or stuff like that. So, and certain situations in a relationship, one person may go through one thing that you may have never seen or experienced before. So how do you go about getting a better understanding of what, or how do you get a better understanding of their experience so that like you said, you could be better informed on how to be there.
Well, I think one of the key pieces to it is not trying to fix the situation, but to be informed about the situation. Because sometimes in a relationship, you jump to want to fix things, or if it's a hurt place, you like, okay, what do I need to do to fix it? Some things are journeys for the individual. So it's something that they will heal from, not something that you have to fix.
Mm-hmm.
But part of that healing may be allowing them to express the experience and then how it's affected them.
Yeah.
So then you get a clear picture, because if it's a big enough issue, that issue will then spread into various other places in their life and then in the relationship too. So then it gives you a clear picture of, well, why did this happen? Or why did this certain, if I say this certain thing, it causes a reaction. It may be intertwined with that issue. And the more you can see it clear, then the thing that used to upset you, you know the context of where they come from. Because what we do in relationships, we take everything personally. So if they say something or it's a blow up or whatever, like, oh, I mean, they always, and it may not be you, it may be something else, but you're the person in closest contact with them. So you get the most of it. You see all the different sides of it. But if you can step back and see the bigger picture of it, you see the source of it. And then that's the way that sometimes being there is just listening without the tendency to want to fix or to feel like a solution needs to be created at the moment. Because sometimes then that'll cut them off in the experience of it, because maybe this is their first time talking about it. And then once they go into it and you try and come with a solution or fix to it, then like you just okay, like okay. And so then it might shut it back off, because like I was trying to be vulnerable, and then when I was vulnerable, you just tried to find the entry point to fix it, to say like, oh, I got you, I'm gonna make sure I got you covered, we're gonna handle this or whatever. It might not need to be handled that way. Maybe it's just the expression of it is the thing that needs to happen.
Yeah, because I think that's one thing, like we as men, that we struggle with is always want to try to fix stuff.
Yeah.
Instead of, just stepping back and, like you said, just kind of see the big picture of things, in relationships. So yeah, that was a good point, because like I said, that's just a natural tendency that we have, is just to step in and try to, fix and correct everything.
Yeah, and we had the same thing too. So we had the inverse. So then we don't share a lot of stuff because we know it's areas that are not as together as we want them to be. And so then we shield them away. So it's like, it's one thing, we'll kind of do it on our end, but we don't want it necessarily for our standpoint, because we want to wall up against the things that make us feel like we not as strong as we want to be.
So it go back to that question I asked earlier, about we're not willing to give what we ask for. So we want you to give us all your information, but we put a wall up and we don't want to talk about ours. And then I had a comment to write that I wrote down that starts with something that you were talking about, Jeffrey. Sometimes we can just get the person to tell us their experience, and then that takes the stance off of me trying to solve it, and that gives them the open to just outpour what they have. Parenting on one, don't be the fixer, because it's not broken, it just needs to be healed. And sometimes we have this stance in our relationships too. You're supposed to deal with my crap and take my crap because we're together.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to deal with my crap and take my crap because we're together and you love me. But having that stance sometimes is what pushes people apart or puts a wedge between them, because everybody else in the world, you let them dump on you, but the person that loves you the most, you dump on them. And so it's taking a different approach. What happens outside the relationship, you internalize it, and then the relationship becomes the dumping ground. And so that creates, trust issues as well, because someone that trusts you or someone that you trust, are they supposed to hurt you? And so we have to look about how we going about doing things, because if we trust people, do we supposed to hurt them? Is it by design or is it on accident? And do we have the language or the content inside to express what our experiences are?
So when you were saying that, what came to my mind was sometimes I'm trying to get the wording right, but sometimes hurt can be a pattern, and so we use that as a way to then distance ourselves from people, because if we know that pain may be involved with something, then that could be our escape route from not wanting to go forward with something. But also that pain could then be the numbing agent to the fantasy too. So then we'll create a fantasy that will help us numb the pain of what is really going on in reality. So it could be vice versa. And so sometimes, like I said, the fantasy can be more hurtful because it's numbing you to the pain that you're actually experiencing.
No, that's good stuff. What you got, Jeffrey? I know you got something else.
Now, like I said, I guess today is my question day. So then you talk about the pain. So is it better to just go ahead and just deal with the pain and to deal with it and go ahead and feel it to try to move past it, or how do you?
Well,
it depends on the type of person.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was looking at it from a standpoint of ownership. I believe that most times we feel that we shouldn't own our pain, and then that's what keeps us away from it. So in a relationship, whatever pain I had before is my responsibility to address that pain, not the person I'm with. I can talk about it, I can make them aware of it, but at the end of the day, it's my responsibility to deal with that pain. And a lot of times that's what we use to get out of it. Like, oh, well, you knew how I was when I got it, when we first started talking. I had it, I cuss folks out, but that's not the person you with, that's not their responsibility though. And then I think the ownership piece is the biggest piece, because if you continuously reflect everything back on yourself and question yourself, it's easier then to put the person you with in a different light. But when you never look at yourself and you always looking at the person, then how you becoming aware of the stuff that you do? Because it's not all them. Some of it's you. And then some of it is your assumptions of what's going on and not even the reality of it. So a lot of times, even if I'm upset about something, I need to reflect on it. I need to go through layers of, okay, was that really an issue? Was that me? Was I just having a bad day that day? Or was that really something? And if I can kind of go through those layers and I get to the point where like, okay, well, maybe that may be something I need to address. Then I can address and say like, hey, the other day we said this, blah, 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 this kind of how I felt about it, and this is why. But I can hold that until I went through my own process of looking at myself first to make sure that, okay, what was my role in it? And where was I at the time when it happened? Because I might have just had a bad day, or I might have had something else, and I just, like what Kenny said, I just dumped my stuff on somebody.
No, you're talking good. So I got 3 points from what you were saying. And I wrote this down, but you end up making these same points.
Okay.
Trust issues, if you just now joined us, our topic today, Life's Classroom, trust issues. Own your pain, be accountable. But Terrence wrote talked about taking advantage of me. A lot of times, we say people take advantage of us, but we allow people to take advantage of us because we stay in the giver role and we don't ever learn how to receive. And so trust issues, if the relationship has an imbalance to it, you can't always be the giver in the relationship and never receive. And you can't always be the receiver in the relationship and never give, because then it is gonna be trust issues. You're gonna wonder why that person never gives, and they're gonna wonder why you can't receive. And if you can't, allow yourself to be either one of those or allow some balance in the relationship, then you're gonna struggle with challenges. And then the biggest trust issue that we hadn't talked about is the infidelity piece. Can people come back from infidelity in relationships?
Okay, hold on. Before we go there, I'm gonna say this: what you said, and there's another layer to it. The giving and receiving doesn't have to be from the same source or the same type.
Yeah.
Most times we equate the giving and receiving; it has to be equal.
Mhm.
So whenever I give, I must receive the same way.
Yeah. And that's not
And
it.
that's not true. That's not true, because you can give things that are not just gifts or money. It could be time. It could be, looking out for that person's well-being. It could be different types of ways you can give. And then receiving may be, receiving information. It doesn't necessarily have to be receiving something big, but it's an exchange and it's a back and forth exchange. So I think that's one thing. And talking from a man's standpoint, the giving part is what we always feel like we have to do, and if we're not doing it to the level we want to, we then devalue ourselves, because I should be the one providing for all of this and this, and we're supposed to be on this level, driving this and living here and and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes you might not be at that place to do it on that level, but what you are doing right now is still giving, but you'll devalue what you already given because it's not what you typically think you should be giving.
So let me jump in and I'm jump back out, because you brought up a great point about what we give and receive. Mm-hmm. So I wrote down 7 different things that we can give and receive. Mm-hmm. Gifts, time, effort, knowledge, vision, strength, encouragement, affection. So all those things are intangible, but those are the things that Terrence was, alluding to when he was saying giving and receiving doesn't always mean it's tangible. Only one of those things, or maybe 2, gifts and affection, may be tangible that you can feel. The rest of it, you can't feel, you can't see. It's about something else. But no, that's a great point. So jump back in. I just wanted to throw those in there.
Jump they were good. They were good. Jeff, you got some?
No, I don't have nothing on that, man. Yeah, you laid it out, man. I can't. We're gonna let that stand right there.
Okay. You laid it out, you can let it stand.
Okay. But so I guess you want to transition to the infidelity part. That's where you're going next.
Well, I asked all question. Can you come back? Yes, I just asked the question. I'm being Jeffrey.
Okay, my bad.
Can you come back from infidelity in relationships?
For me,
back for infidelity in relationships.
For me, it depends on how the relationship is structured. If from the beginning that was already communicated what that would mean in a relationship, then probably not. But if it was some gray area in it, or depending on the personality of the person, it can be a road back. But you just have to understand that with infidelity and then that breach of trust, then that trust has to be rebuilt. So I think Kenny was talking about foundation earlier. You think about your relationship as a foundation. Infidelity is the thing that cracks that foundation or destroys that foundation. So once that happens, it can be repaired Sometimes it's repairing the crack, or if it's totally demolished, you got to re-pour a foundation, and a foundation takes some time. So if you're gonna have a rollback, then you have to rebuild the foundation and then build from there up. But you can't start from where you were, because that's not how it's not gonna happen that way.
And I think that kind of ties into what Kendra was saying, earlier about your values.
Yep.
If that's one of my values, then and you violate that, then it may not be able to come back from that.
Mhm.
So kind of like you all were saying, it really depends on, I guess, depends on the person.
Mhm.
If they're willing, 'cause like you said, you got to build that foundation back, and that's going to take a lot of work. So
Mhm.
are you willing to, start back over and go through all of that work
Yeah.
to come back?
Yeah. And then also I want to add something else too that could be a barrier. So sometimes if you have kids, you married and all that kind of stuff, that then brings other layers to it, because you may then seek to work it out because you don't want to break up the home or the kids. You want to make sure that they're covered. And so sometimes that could be a motivating factor too. Infidelity is like, okay, can this be repaired not only for our relationship, but to maintain what our family structure
Yeah.
is?
So I'll add this layer because Renee brought this piece up, and I'll touch on it. And this is the reason that I say it this way. So Renee said it can be hard. I will forgive, but I will not forget.
Mhm.
So forgiveness equals forgetting. And here's why I say forgiveness equals forgetting. Because if you don't forget, even if that relationship ends, you're going to go into your next relationship still remembering what has been done to you or who's offended you, and you're going to treat them that same way because you hadn't forgot the offense that was taken against you.
Mhm.
So if we forgive, it's for us, but it's for us to move past, and we have to forget too, because forgetting helps us in a future relationship, not the current. I'll say that again. Forgetting helps us in a future relationship and not the current. Because when we experience trust issues, once we forgive and move past them, it may not be for the current relationship. It may be for the relationship that you was destined to have. But you had to have trust issues in the first one to reap the reward and benefits in the next one. So your trust issues or pain serve the purpose. It sets you up for the alley-oop of a successful relationship, and it showed you exactly what you deserved and what you didn't deserve.
Mhm. While you were talking, I had wrote, so not forgetting is like drinking your own poison. The longer you hold on to that, you're holding on to that pain. So that's why the forgetting part can be the thing that we embrace the most, because it's the emotions behind it.
Mhm.
In our mind, we can forgive. The forget part is the emotional part. And so we want to then hold that. So then if you get to a point where that happens again, I can unleash that emotion that I got tied to that. So that's
Mhm.
why that's why the forgetting part is the thing that people don't want to do, because
Yeah,
they want to get to a point where they can hurt the person back the way
yeah,
they want. And that's the whole reason why the forgetting part is hard. It's not forgetting it like it didn't happen. It's
yeah,
overcoming the emotion. As long as I got that emotion, I can use it as a weapon. You just wait for the right time. You say the right thing and you do the right thing. I got you. I got something for you. And I've been holding it for a while. I'm waiting on you. And that's what we do. That's why it's hard to forget. It's
yeah,
not because of the act, it's the emotion. We
yeah,
want to hold on to the emotion to retaliate in due time.
yeah. And so I wrote down the word traumatize. When we don't forget, we re-traumatize ourselves over and over. And like Terrence said, we unleash your wrath of those pent up or bottled emotions when you don't choose to forget and choose you. And you continue to repeat that pattern. And like I said, a lot of trust issues have to do with patterns. It has to do with our experience. So what we learned and what we've experienced ourselves. And so definitely a great piece to that. We're not going to hit all 5 of all points today, but that's okay because I think it was meant for us to stay in the romantic piece to trust issues. And then I think the last piece we can hit, let's hit family. Let's talk about trust issues in family.
Okay.
This is gonna take us on out.
What piece you want to talk about? So it's often said that issue with your family, that can be the most hurtful and the strongest type of trust issue that you can have because that's blood. And most oftentimes they're the ones that's closest to you. So if you have trust issues within your family, then that can have ramifications that ripple out several different ways. And it might not just mean your immediate family, but those that's connected to you, what you do. So when you think about trust issues, it's almost kind of like you have like those circles around you, kind of like an infographic. So you have you in the middle and then circles around you. These different issues permeate through all those other circles. So it can start with family, but then it can go to work. It can go to whatever. It can go to church. It can go to community. It can ripple out. And that's why it's important to handle trust issues because then it informs how everything else plays. But if you can have peace in your house, then where else will you have peace? So that's the one place that you would at least want to come to that's like, oh, I can take a break from all of this stuff that's been going on around me all day long and all this stuff that's been chipping at how I feel about myself and my confidence, self-esteem, and everything else. And then you get home and it's like, I can't even rest here either. And that's why it's important to deal with these things. I have these conversations because at the end of the day, what we don't talk about, it then still is trapped inside of us. So a lot of the physical pain we have and nothing to do with us being sick. It has everything to do with what we've been suppressing. And our body's trying to tell us what's going on and we ignore it constantly.
Mm-hmm.
Until we get to a point like, I'm in so much pain, I need to do something about it.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Yeah. And I've been one of them people, so I know I'm speaking from experience. I've been one of them people, so I know.
What you got, Jeffrey?
Trust issues in the family, man. That's for me, it's kind of one of those things where if you can't trust your family, who can you trust?
For real.
You'd be surprised how many people can't trust about their family.
Because
let me say this, and then I'm gonna let Jeffrey keep going. So then it depends on how you define family.
Yeah.
Your blood, or it could be the family that you create. Okay, so you go.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Because I forget what I was going with that. But yeah,
my bad.
Nah, you good. Yeah, you can't trust your family, you can't trust anybody, but then in certain instances, it's like, yeah, you can trust everybody else around you.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't trust the people that's closest to you. And I think that's the most hurtful thing that a lot of people deal with It's like, okay, you're close to me. You know me, but you constantly hurt me, and so I can't trust you. But I can go outside, and everything is good. So kind of like what T was saying, it's like outside everything good, but you come home or whatever, and it's not peaceful. That's the what I'm trying to say. Like I said, if you can't find peace at home, then you really can't find peace nowhere else.
Yeah, because that's where you retreat to. Home
Right.
is always like your retreat, your sanctuary, the place where you can, like we were talking about before, when strengthening our kryptonite, it's the place you can take your cape off, you can take the superhero stuff off, you take your uniform off, and you can just be you. And if you can't be you in your own house, then where can you be you at?
So I'll add this. I said this earlier, trust is based on experience. A lot of time we give our family permission to do the things that they do because we extend our hand and we keep expecting different results, and they continue to give us the same, reaction. So is it them that needs to change, or is it us? I told a friend before, he was always giving gifts to the person that he was dating. And that person wasn't giving him the same type of gifts in return, or didn't give him gifts in return. And then she got upset when he stopped giving the gifts, and he got upset that she was upset. Well, I'm like, can you get upset with somebody because you constantly give and they take?
Yep.
And you never, asked or allowed yourself to receive, or never, made it important enough to tell them that you want to receive. So you can't get mad at them for always taking if you've always stayed in the giving, place. And so you got to learn to talk about what you need. And sometimes family gonna do that same thing. As long as you give, they'll take. They'll take your time, but you got to let them know that you want this to be a reciprocal relationship. And then people can change their stance or posture. But if you don't have any expectations of anybody and they got expectations of you, then you can expect trust issues because they got expectations and you don't. Having no expectations is setting yourself up to fail because it's not having a plan. You got to have some expectations of the relationships you want because it goes in line with your values. When people offend or hurt one of your values, that's where the trust, takes place. You call them habitual line steppers, but they don't know they're crossing the line.
Because you ain't set on line.
You ain't set a line. You a boundaryless person getting mad because people stepping over line that invisible.
That's good. That's when I tell you that's good right there, what you just said right there, that's good. Man. That's good.
But we get mad with everybody else, and it's us. So you gotta check yourself before you point the finger, because you gotta change your posture if you want to have better relationships with people. And it's okay to hold people accountable and expect things from them. Because we expect things from our kids, but we don't want to expect things from other people in relationships. Don't make sense. How can I expect things from my kids, but I don't expect things from people? Don't make any sense at all. But we go through life having no expectations of people and giving away all our time, effort, energy, money, and don't expect anything in return, but just be there. You got a line longer than the line that was people were voting in the other day, or people that's ready to take advantage of you if that's how you operate.
Woo! My. Well, thank you for coming today. Life Classroom. We appreciate your time and your presence. ain't nothing else can be said after what Kendra just said. That's the amen. Ushers are coming around. If you want to cash out and sow into this good ministry, sow into that good word that you just received, you can. But it's been a real great conversation today. It really has been, and so hopefully it blessed you like it blessed us. We didn't know exactly what angle we were gonna go in, but we went where we needed to go. And hopefully that was where you needed it to go as well. So Jeffrey and Kendra, you ain't got nothing else to say because you already
I'm done.
you ain't got nothing. You didn't say it. Jeffrey, you got something else? Okay. Okay, so I was gonna close us out because Kendra then went on and preached. So the last thing I say is, don't be a giver just because you don't want to be alone.
Ooh, say it again. Say it one more time.
Don't be a giver just because you don't want to be alone. And they made me feel like, back in the day when Frank Miller used to do the bottom line, and that's the bottom line. That's it.
All right. Well, as always, we enjoyed our discussion. Share this with one or two people if you enjoyed the discussion. And like I said, continue to look for different things and dynamic things from us over the next, few weeks, few months, few years. And we'll come to you again on Monday from the iProgress page with another topic to move you forward. God bless. Good day.
Have a good one.